And live.
Good evening, everyone. We're going to wait another minute or so before calling the meeting to order to give people additional time to join the Zoom meeting. So we should be able to start shortly. Okay. We're expecting a couple more members of the commission to join, so I want to give them another minute to do that. Caitlin, do you have I know you said you had your phone here. Do you have the capability of sending anyone like a text message or anything to remind them? Maybe they didn't realize the time or something.
Yep, I can do that right now.
That'd be great. Thanks. And either way, we'll start no later than about 7:03 out of respect for the people that are here on time. If anyone's wondering why my voice sounds a little different, I'm kind of getting over some kind of a bug. I'm pretty much over it now. So. Okay, we have another one just joined. Okay, so all right, so we have 5 of the 6 current members, so I'm going to officially call the meeting to order. All right, so calling the virtual meeting of the Newburyport Historical Commission for the 12th of January 2023 to order. Please be aware that this proceeding, like all the city virtual meetings, is being recorded. So we'll do a roll call, see who is here in alphabetical order. Mr. Andrew Bernhardt.
I'm here.
Okay, thank you. Biff Baus, I believe you're here.
Yes, I'm here.
Great. Mark Sandrone, is he with us yet? He not yet, I don't see. Okay, so we'll hold off on Mark. Christopher Fay.
I'm here.
Thank you, Chris. Joe Morgan.
Yes, here.
Okay, and this is the chair, Glenn Richards, speaking. I will temporarily move Mr. Mark to absent unless he shows up very quickly. Okay, also present is Caitlin Sullivan, a planner, and Gretchen Joy is taking minutes. Is Andy planning on joining us tonight, Caitlin, do you know?
I don't believe so, not tonight.
Okay, all right, thank you. So the usual rules apply. If and when we get to a public hearing period, I'll explain the process for that. Ordinarily, just the commissioners will have their audio enabled, as well as the either the applicant or the whoever is speaking for the applicant, such as their attorney, and the rest of the time the attendees' audio is muted. So let's move to our first demolition delay application. Actually, there is just one tonight. It's 5 Gloria Street. That is a residence out on Plum Island. I believe Attorney Mead is going to be speaking for the applicant. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. And you are obviously, we can hear you loud and clear. I see also Ben Taylor is with your office. Right now he's muted. Is that okay?
I think that's okay right now. Yep.
Okay. All right, that's fine. Anyone else that you need to speak on this particular application?
I don't think so. It could be that Finn or Mindy Gay, who are the designers on the project, they may be on, but they weren't sure whether they could make it. So I'm not. I don't know.
I do see a Phineas Gay. So.
Yep. So then.
All right. So if you'd like to have that person say anything, just let us know. We'll unmute them. All right.
Thank you very much.
So I see you've got a presentation. So why don't you go ahead and begin that, Attorney Mead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. For the record, Lisa Mead, Tellerman Costa, 30 Green Street. And as you noted, chair with me is my colleague, Ben Taylor, and the designers on the project, Finn Gay. Also, I believe present this evening would be Peter Brandt and Leah Hayes, who are the owners of 5 Gloria Street, which is the structure and property that we're going to talk about this evening. We're here to seek a determination, frankly, of no historic significance after we make the presentation. If you could go to the next slide, please, Caitlin. So 5 Gloria Street is a property that's improved with a home and a shed. The structure or some part of it potentially was constructed in or about 1900, according to the assessor's records. It is located in the R3 and Plum Island Overlay District. The property is not listed on the district data sheets, and there is no Form B for the property. In addition to the other apparent changes, which we're going to show you in a minute, the original structure over the time, the structure underwent a significant remodeling or renovation in 1996, which included the, and I'm going to quote this, alteration of the roof. However, when you see this shortly and from the building permits, it appears that this 2-story portion of the structure was not an original portion of the structure that is being proposed to be affected, but is part of the removal. And the structure generally is really devoid of any original period detail and has had significant roofline changes. And it is, I would say, when we see this shortly, there's little pieces of this, maybe what was originally a cottage out there, but no longer exists. So if you could go to the first photo, please. So Gloria Street, for all of you who don't know, is a street off of Old Point Road. And this is a shot from Gloria Street. Next slide, please. And you can see in that shot and in this shot, this is the addition or a change that was made in the late 90s, we believe. Next slide, please. And this is as you're approaching on Gloria Street. This is, you can see the changes to the roof. There may be a little hint of what was originally a cottage there, but as you can see, the foundation looks, newer, obviously, than 1900. Next slide, please. Here's the rear. There's a deck that's been out in the rear. Again, you can see the foundation, pretty solid concrete under there. Next slide, please. And this is a side elevation to the existing structure. Next slide, please. Here's some decking. And again, here's another elevation. You can see the bay window that was added at the top there. Next slide, please. And here's some deck that was added to that 1-story level of the structure. Next slide, please. And then we provided some neighborhood shots of the structure. So this is from Old Point Road going up to Gloria Street. Next slide, please. And here you see another vantage point of the structure. Next slide, please. And this is a little further away. The structure in this one is off to in the distance, right behind where the sign is for the street. So you can see that. We just wanted to provide some neighborhood concept. We had context. We had that question last time we were in here. So we just wanted to take some larger views.
All right.
So with that review, we would request, and I think you can go to the next slide, please, Caitlin. We request the board, we believe that there's really no historic significance to the structure. And we'd request the board take a vote that, in fact, the structure is not historically significant nor considered for preservation.
Okay, thank you, Attorney Mead. Okay, well, fellow commissioners, I think it's obvious what the situation we're dealing with here is one of those, what probably was a typical shack / cottage that in its probable first state. We don't, who knows, right? Without having doing a forensic examination of this thing, but it's been added to and well, well, you saw the pictures. They speak 1,000 words. Does anyone have a comment about, I think what we'll do is do the, split up vote. So the first motion we should vote on is the structure historically significant? So the motion would be this, the structure is historically significant, and if you feel that it is not, you would vote against that. We don't have to make the motion right away. If anyone has a comment or an opinion to render, this would be the time to do it. Anyone? Joe, Chris? No, Joe shaking his head. Chris or Andrew, any thoughts? No.
No.
Would anyone care to make, we can start with that motion that the structure is historically significant. We can take that vote.
I'll move that it's historically significant.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Is there a second for that?
Seconded.
Okay,
Joe.
thank you, Joe. So we'll go around. Andrew, your vote on that? Again, so a no vote means you believe it is not historically significant. A yes vote means you, in your opinion, it is historically significant.
I don't believe it's historically significant.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you broke up there a little bit. I
No.
didn't.
No,
Okay, not.
no,
Okay,
I don't
thank
believe
you.
it's.
Okay, and Mr. Biff rather.
No, I don't believe it to be historically significant.
Okay, that's a no vote. Chris Fay.
I would vote no.
Okay, thank you. Joe Morgan.
No.
Okay, thanks. And the chair at this point, this vote is no longer even required, but I'll join my fellow commissioners. To be honest, Attorney Mead, I think I was leaning that way before I even heard your presentation. Based on the photos and everything, it is what it is. It's a structure that I have to agree, no longer really retains any of what it may have originally had in the first place. So the vote motion passes that it is not historically significant. So then there is no demolition delay, etc. Okay,
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. We greatly appreciate the board's time this evening.
you are quite welcome. Let's go on to just give me a second here. We have several requests for support of applications for community preservation funds. We'll take them in the order that they were in the agenda. The first one is the repair job at the Customs House, and I believe I saw some names I recognized from the Custom House in the attendees list. I recognize Gregory Colling and Doug Meir. Who's going to speak for this?
Chair, I believe it's going to be Gregory Colling, going to be leading the presentation, and I will note that Mark Sandrone has just joined the meeting.
Oh, thank you. Okay, Greg, can you, there you go. You're unmuted now, Gregory Colling. Can you say something so we can verify we can hear you okay?
Sure, yes. My name is Gregory Colling.
Yep.
I'm an architect with Merrimack Design Architects. I've been working on the Custom House Maritime Museum since 2009 and have led several preservation projects on the building. And we are requesting CPC funding for a masonry repair project this year. And some of you may be aware that in 2013, we led an MHC funded project to repoint, do 100% cut and repoint of the south facade on Water Street.
Mm-hmm.
And on the west facade on Custom House Way. And predating that work, in 2005, the Custom House had done a masonry repointing project on the east and north facades. That work was undertaken and not overseen by a preservation consultant or preservation architect, and the workmanship and the mortar mix was not correct. And we're looking to repoint those facades and continue to preserve the building. And what my priority is for the Custom House Maritime Museum is to keep the water out of the building.
Hmm.
So we have solicited an estimate for the work, and basically I've reused the specifications from the 2013 MHC project. We're following the same mortar mix specifications, which is a lime mortar with Portland cement mix and sand. And we'll be repairing the east facade and the north facade. When the work was done in 2005, they did not remove the iron setting wedges that are all over the building. And we're proposing to have those iron setting wedges ground back and to have the masonry joints repointed. This was done again on the south and west facades. So we're just continuing to maintain and preserve the building and follow the procedures that we've already established. So I've provided photographs. You could flip to the next slide, Caitlin. This is the east facade facing the New England Development property. And there's some, there are voids in some of the masonry bed joints at the northeast corner pilaster on the right side. There is a joint that is almost 2 inches in width. It's behind that, just to the right of the downspout at the corner pilaster. And that's been a chronic problem where water has that joint has failed. You know, there was movement there at some point in the history of the building. And we're looking to repoint that and basically create a new mortar joint. And then we would create a soft joint in front of that with a sealant that we've used on other work on the building, and they mix sand in with the sealant so that it looks like a mortar joint. Because of the size of the joint, the mortar continues to fail. So we're going to correct that work. There is some work that we're doing on the interior in the storage room in the basement. There's a groin vault there that has never been repaired, and it has old damage that's been caused by chronic water infiltration in that through that facade. So again, we're trying to prevent water vapor and bulk water penetration into the building. So this is part of maintaining this historic building. There's also some granite cracking, and there's some spot repairs that we're going to be doing to some of the stonework, which was again done on the south facade and the west facade, and there are epoxy repairs that are specific to individual cracked stones that we'll be addressing. You could go to the next slide.
Excuse me for the pardon the interruption. So
Yeah, no problem.
the south facade, which is the front, where the front entrance is,
Correct.
and the northern facade, that's the one towards like Market Square, let's say.
No,
did you
the north facade is facing the Merrimack River.
Oh,
It's on-
okay,
yeah, it's
okay.
facing the bike
The-
trail on the river.
It's the one we're looking at now then, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So were there two facades that have already been repaired,
Yes, the south facade facing Water Street, the front of the building,
right?
and then the west facade, which is on the
Oh,
Custom
okay.
House Way.
That's the one okay. And okay, so you're for some reason, and I apologize for this, I saw the whole thing about the portico and the photos. So this project also includes repairs to the leak in the portico, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, I'll let
I'm
you
going to, yeah, I'll get
All
to
right, go ahead.
that.
All right, go ahead.
So in any case, on the north facade, in the photo that you're looking at, on the left corner, there's a lilac bush against the building. There's biological growth in the stone and the joints. There are several iron setting wedges in the base of the building at that corner pilaster that are exposed, and the mortars failed and the joints are open. So we're proposing to correct that. Up on the upper right, up in the gable at the rake molding, there's a void up there that we're going to fill. And we're going to do probably 100% cut and repoint on this facade as well. Another thing that the commission should note, and this is work that had been previously approved, we are replacing those aluminum doors with a wood V-groove board doors that were previously approved, and we received CPC funding for that. There was a delay in the project because the doors were fabricated and there was a mistake. They had to be refabricated, and we lost our window of opportunity to get them installed. They will be installed this spring.
Yes, I remember that. Okay.
Yeah. And probably in conjunction, hopefully in coordination with the masonry work that we're going to be doing on that facade. And then there are also, this building was a fireproof building and it had cast iron shutters. And there are the remnants of the old pintles in the facade. They're cast iron pintles. And it would, you would damage the granite to try to remove them. So they've been left in place. They've been cut back to the granite, and they've been treated with an epoxy coating that protects them from further corrosion. And we'll be also doing treatment to the exposed ferrous metal on the building and recoating that.
Oh, another quick
Protect that.
question. You mentioned iron setting wedges. Forgive my ignorance here. What are those?
In all of the bed joints on the building, when the masons constructed this building, they used iron wedges to set the joint widths between all the granite blocks.
To get the separation between the blocks?
Correct. And they left those wedges in there, and they were supposed to be set back behind the mortar joint.
Right.
And what's happened over time is they've been exposed. As soon as their water is introduced, they rust, and they rust jack, and they can crack the rust jacking will crack the granite. So we want to get them ground back.
Right. Okay.
So that they're in probably one inch back from the face of the granite, so that a bed joint will protect them.
Right.
And
Okay.
they won't
Thank you.
cause further spalling of the granite, which has happened in a couple places on the building. Next slide. So I'm going to jump to the south elevation. So the scope of work is primarily focused on the east facade and the north facade, but there are some maintenance issues also that we're going to include in the scope of work while we have the manpower on site and the equipment. This is brought to my attention from the director, Chris Silva, that this was taken in November. And this was after a rainstorm, and there's a wash on top of the rake up in the gable. There's a mortar wash, and apparently some water has found its way through that and come through the bed molding beneath. You can see the wetting of the structure there. We're going to take a look at that and see how we can address that. And then also the south portico, if you could, Caitlin, if you could flip to the next slide. On the south portico, there is a lead-coated copper flat seam hipped roof that dates to the 1972 building restoration. And that roof, the joints have failed. We had a copper roofer come and evaluate. The seams were not folded correctly at the hip. One of them, they're allowing water into the structure and they're wetting the structure. The ceiling of the portico is a V-groove board ceiling, and we're going to probably we're going to take that ceiling down, investigate if there's been any structural damage to the framing in that roof, repair that, and then replace the ceiling in kind. And then we're replacing the flat seam lead coated copper roof in kind.
And
there's also a vertical joint at the window there on that south facade above the roof that's open, and we'll also be addressing that it's a minor issue, but
Okay.
while they're working.
Yeah, just sorry, quick. I tend to ask these en route, so
sure.
I don't forget these questions. The 72 renovation, is that you had mentioned earlier in your talk that there was a lot of work done at that point that was not, for example, the inappropriate mortar. Are we talking the same
Yeah,
time period?
there were, unfortunately, I mean, the history of the restoration of this building in 1972, it was a HUD federally funded
Mhm.
project. They had to use the low bid contractor,
Mhm.
and the contractors defaulted on the work.
Hmm.
For example, most of the windows in the building failed. The original windows failed, and most of them have been replaced. The replacement windows were replaced. And same thing with the slate roof. In 2019, we replaced the entire slate roof.
Yeah.
Thanks to the Community Preservation Act, and the new roof is constructed. The slate spacing is correct, and the snow guards are installed correctly, and there's no moisture leakage on the roof. The gutters have been relined. So this is we're trying to finish up some of the loose ends
Mhm.
where there's still some lingering problems from the inadequate work that was done in 1972.
Okay.
So that's so there'll be no, this is a formality, and we are asking for the support of the Historic Commission.
Mhm.
Preservation on the restriction on the building doesn't require these. We're doing in-kind repairs and replacement, so we don't have to necessarily get approval from the NHC, but we appreciate your support for this work, and we're being diligent about doing the right thing, following the Secretary of the Interior standards for preservation,
Mhm.
and taking care of this building and giving it the attention that it deserves to protect the building and the collections within.
Right.
Caitlin, can you go to the next slide? So these are from these are photographs that were contained in a report that we prepared in 2021, where we did a full assessment of the building to plan future projects. And these are photographs identifying some of the problems on the east facade and the north facade. And the arrows point to open joints and voids in the masonry. And then the upper left photograph identifies the setting wedges and the biological growth in that northeast corner of the building. Next slide, please. We also worked with a thermal envelope engineer who also, in addition, we've done some probes on the interior of the building to study and analyze the vapor drive and the moisture characteristics of the exterior wall in order to preserve the collections in the building. And this is some of their work. It's a firm in Hudson, Mass, Trippy Engineering Associates. Next slide. Is that it? Oh, yeah, and then again, these are more photographs from the engineers. Analysis of the poor quality mortar mix on the east and north facades, and then some of the open bed joints. And you can see the close-up photo, the last photo at the bottom of an iron setting wedge that's corroded, that's exposed.
Mhm.
And I think that's it.
Okay.
So we appreciate your time and your attention, and we've always relied on your support, and we've appreciated you guys shepherding, when we had to redraft the preservation restriction for the building.
Mhm.
We're doing the best we can.
Yep. And I know the commission is happy to see that yourself and others involved with the Maritime Museum now are doing their very best to exercise good stewardship of the structure and maintain it properly and try to preserve it for the future.
Yeah, and the architectural assessment that I prepared in 2021 is really was intended to create a, basically I assembled all the historic data for the building and all the projects
Mhm.
that have been done in the past
Mhm.
to give decision makers the information that they need to properly care for this building, so that people aren't, new people that come to the organization on the board or leadership
Right.
understand the history of this building and what's been, the efforts that have been done over the years to preserve it and maintain it.
No, I'm glad to hear that. That's an important piece of work. All right, let me turn to my fellow commissioners here. First, does anyone have a question or comment they'd like to make? Anyone have any questions for Mr. Colling? Or would anyone care to comment on this? What this is leading up to is I'm going to ask for a motion that the NHC will send a letter or email in support of the project, which we can take a vote on. But before we do that, I want to allow you folks to, express an opinion or ask a question. Yeah, Joe, I see your hand.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Sure.
So our job in reviewing these CPA grants or grant requests are to make sure that they, under the rubric of historic projects, is to make
Right.
sure that they do comply with the criteria for qualifying historic projects. This is obviously an historic project, it's a very important project and landmark here in Newburyport. And as I read it, it complies with the second criterion out of the 4 that are listed, which is preservation of an historic resource. So I don't think there's any question that this complies with that criterion. The only other thing is I would really, after listening to Greg's presentation, I'd like to really just commend him for his expertise and his interest and his dedication to this building, and thank him for the work that he that he brings in his analysis of this problem and his solutions. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
I appreciate it. Thanks.
Yeah, I would echo that. I know that as long as I've been on this commission, I know Mr. Colling has been involved in for a number of years now, and it's definitely been an asset to the Custom House to have someone like him with both combination of his knowledge and his desire to do right by the structure. Anyone else have a thought, comment? If you want to try moving a motion, we could. What we usually do in these cases is, well, first of all, thank you also, Joe, for pointing out what our work is here. We're obviously we don't, we're not approving or disapproving the work itself. That would be a different situation. And as Mr. Colling pointed out, they're just doing maintenance and repairs of an in-kind nature, so they're not changing anything that would affect the preservation restriction. So that's all set. But it helps their application for CPA funds if as much support as they have from the community is always helpful. So typically what we do, if we as a commission believe that it's a worthwhile thing to do, we'll send an email, a letter, email, whatever, to the CPC. And I should mention that Joe on this commission is our representative on the Community Preservation Committee involved in this. Thank you for doing that, Joe. And to join whatever other letters of support they have. Would anyone? Oh, I see.
Chair,
Yes.
we saw the same thing. I think we see that the Custom House has raised their hand.
Yes, I was just going to say that. I just noticed it. Thank you.
So Chris Silva, the executive director of the Custom House. I want to say that the work that Greg has put into this has been exemplary. It's awesome. What we're trying to do here is really preserve the exterior integrity of the building. And I look forward to working with the community and getting this done. Greg has been awesome on getting this put together.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Chris. What was it? I didn't catch the last name.
Silva.
Silva. Right. Oh, thank you.
Sorry about my my vision there, but that's it. That's who I am.
No problem. Unless there's something else, you may put your hand down now. Thank you. Okay. Would someone like to make a motion that we'll send a note expressing the support of the NHC for the project?
I would just like to say, I mean, I think this building obviously is as already mentioned, so greatly important to Newburyport, and I think one of the things that really sets it apart architecturally is the way the building is clad in that stone, and it's so, I think, important to it. So to see that those repairs that were done poorly almost 50 years ago are being corrected, I think is commendable, and I'm really glad to see it. And with that, I would like to make a motion that we would send a letter of recommendation.
Okay, so that was Biff. Thank you, Biff. Is there a second for that?
Seconded.
I second Andrew.
Okay, 2 seconds. I heard Joe first, Andrew, so we'll do Joe. Okay, but now, and Andrew, you can cast the
Yes.
first vote. Okay, which is a yes. Biff.
Yes.
Yes, for me as well.
Okay, now Mark Sandrone has joined us, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah, with my apologies for being late.
Okay, and Mark, I think you joined in time to hear the presentation, correct?
Absolutely, yes. And I
Yes.
will vote yes also.
Okay, thank you. Chris Fay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Joe Morgan?
Yes.
Okay, and the chair agrees. All right, so you have a unanimous vote there, Chris and Greg, and we wish you luck with that. We'll send that. I think there's a little bit of time, right? I don't think these decisions will be made for a few months. Maybe Joe, maybe you know. I think they're pretty early on in the process for this year at this point, aren't they?
Yeah, it's been accelerated,
Oh,
the
yeah?
CPC's calendar, but we meet the first time next week, I believe, though, for presentations and questions. So
Okay.
I don't know if our letters of support would be needed next week or not. Maybe Caitlin can guide us on that.
Sure, absolutely. So CPC meets next week just to go over the proposed presentation schedule. I think if we had the letters in by the first presentation schedule, which is February 2nd, that would be great.
I'll make a note of that.
Greg, do you want to comment on this or?
On the CPC schedule,
Yeah, we have already our letters of intention and support already involved.
to my knowledge, this is the first asking for the Historic Commission support is the first letter of support that I'm aware of.
Yep.
So we very much love working with the Historic Commission, and we appreciate all of your support and the time that you have all spent. And some of it, has not been easy in the past when the preservation restriction was amended, but we again appreciate everyone's support.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, you're very welcome. You can either so you're all set. You can either stick around for more of the meeting, or you're free to go as you wish.
Okay, thanks very much, everyone. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye. All right, let's move to the next of the projects. Actually, you know what?
Chair, it's Caitlin.
Yeah.
I will mention that we do have Ted Reddy here from the Parks Commission. If you by chance wanted to hear his application first, which is the Atkinson Common Rock Tower.
Well, it's funny you should suggest that, because I was going to say there are two of them that we're just going to kind of speak to with yourself, Caitlin, and so on. But there was the one other one that had a person in here in person. Why don't we move that up? And that is the Atkinson Rock Tower. So who's here to speak for that? Caitlin?
We have Ted Reddy, who is the Parks Commission Chair.
Okay.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great.
Ted Baretti, okay.
Yeah, Ted Baretti, Chair of the Parks Commission, 67 Marlborough Street, if that's important.
Sure.
Yeah, so I am here this evening to ask you to support our application to the CPC for funds to restore the Atkinson Common Rock Tower. The Parks Commission believes that the tower is not only a unique and valuable feature of the park, but that the tower also possesses significant historical value to both Atkinson Common and Newburyport.
Mhm. And I'm sorry, Ted, I missed your title. Could you please remind me what that?
Oh yeah,
what
chair of the Newburyport Parks Commission.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. From one chair to another, no problem.
Okay,
So-
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, let me continue. So today, visitors to Atkinson Common, what they mostly encounter is a rundown ruin of a tower. There's no plaque or signage serving to remind visitors that the tower has stood in Atkinson Common since 1936, for 87 years. Rumors abound about its origins and its original purpose, with some even suggesting that it was once a jail tower. Anyone who peeks inside is bound to see nothing but trash, rot, and rust. The Parks Commission decided that something clearly needs to be done.
Yep.
Caitlin, the next slide, please.
Yeah, I can personally verify that from
Yeah, I
experience.
think anyone who's visited it probably can. So the tower isn't original to the park. As you probably know, the land was donated to the city by Eunice Atkinson Currier in 1873. The Belleville Improvement Society wasn't founded until 1893, and then in 1894, the volunteers began to lay out the first paths and plantings that would make the land recognizable as Atkinson Common. At the turn of the century, monuments and tablets commemorating Civil War soldiers were added, and a tower, the first tower, wasn't erected until 1917. This was a wooden tower situated at the end of the Long Avenue of Pines. Thanks to good old New England winters, it didn't last very long. But by 1931, in the midst of the Depression, local leaders devised a plan that would both put locals back to work and also add a very unique feature to Atkinson Common, which is the new stone tower. The next slide, please, Caitlin. After a few years, the plans for the tower changed. It was originally going to be brick. They changed it to fieldstone. The presidential administration changed from Hoover to FDR. Hoover's ERA became FDR's WPA. And finally, construction of the tower commenced. And the Belleville Improvement Society, as it has always been, was there. They supplied, I believe it was originally $10,000 worth of materials. The WPA provided 7 local men, laborers. Total cost was $40,000. The next slide, please.
The slide said 70 men. Was it 7 or 70?
70. 70. So in 1936, Atkinson, the construction completed, Atkinson had its 50-foot tower. The tower, as you can see there in the top of the photo, anchored one end of a long promenade that started with the Soldiers and Sailors Monument, which is the soldier statue near High Street. Visitors then passed through the Civil War tablets, over the Lily Pond Bridge, drawing visitors deeper into the park to all the new vegetation and plantings that had been made. And from all accounts, the tower was enjoyed immensely. You could get views of the river from the top. Views that you can't get now because all of the trees have matured and grown so high. The next slide, please.
Just a quick question, just out of curiosity. I noticed in that aerial photo, this is residential houses on either side of the park. Did those come later, so to speak, or was the park boundary just always where it is now?
So from my understanding, I mean, if we want to talk about when the money was donated by Eunice Atkinson Currier in 1873, it was known as kind of a pasture land. So it was really kind of rolling hills. And for how many years? 20 years before the Belleville Improvement Society got its hands on it in around 1893. I mean, it was just open field. And my guess is that I don't know
Right.
Where Eunice Atkinson Currier's house may have been if it was bordering the land.
Yeah.
But my guess is that many of those houses came much later.
Yeah. All right. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Oh, no, that's fine. That's fine. We were on slide 5. Yes. So the question that I mean, I've been asking myself as the chair of the Parks Commission, we've been asking ourselves is whether or not the tower really is worth preserving, whether or not it's valuable enough a feature for the park, and whether its history is worth remembering. Now, the Parks Commission certainly believes it is a valuable asset, both as a parks feature and as a kind of artifact of an important moment in Newburyport's history. And there you can see, I mean, that is really what you see when you look inside. The Belleville Improvement Society, if you go to the next slide, the Belleville Improvement Society also agrees with us about the value of the tower. For years, they've been raising funds, and they've already spent thousands in efforts to restore the tower. What year was that? I think this was
Looks like 2012.
2012. Yeah. So it's been, they've been working for a while to raise money to restore the tower. The next slide, please, Caitlin. Our application to the CPC is for about, as you can see, just about 60,000. Our interest now is only in phase 1 of the work. The 60,000 is enough to coat the tower with a sealer to prevent further erosion of the concrete. The first of 5 phases that will hopefully result, hopefully before its centennial, will result in a complete restoration. The project is supported by the current administration, the Belleville Improvement Society, which is probably not surprising, the Museum of Old Newbury, and we hope to have your support as well. And if you go to slide 8, I think that's all I got.
Okay. Is there now? I noticed bullet number 2 on slide 7. If you can go back for a second, Caitlin, is about a roof. So, what's the status of the roof now? I'm just concerned about, if you prepare concrete and coat and all that, if water is still coming in through the roof, I imagine you're still going to have issues with degradation and
So,
such.
if you back up to slide 6, let's take a look. I want to say replacement material, repointing, cleaning, repair of exterior stones. That's really, I haven't been to the top of the tower, and I am not the point person with regards to the tower. From what I understand, you're absolutely right that a lot of the deterioration, especially in the interior of the tower, is obviously from rain and weather.
Right. Usually is.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I can't go. Can you go back to 7? I'm looking at that slide there. So if again, as far as the phasing, repair concrete and coat with an epoxy sealer. My guess, your guess is as good as mine. My guess is that phase 2 will certainly happen as, I don't know what the coat, I don't know what the condition of the exterior walls is, and whether or not the condition of the exterior walls is bad enough that it would require that kind of immediate coating with the epoxy sealer to prevent degradation on the exterior before the fixing of the roof enclosure. But from what I understand, those 2 phases, phases 1 and 2, are kind of like piggybacking part and parcel.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you, Ted. I've been asking a lot of questions. Let me see if my colleagues have any questions for you or comments. What do you think, gentlemen? Anyone have a question or a comment? Joe, I think I see your hand.
Yes, I had the same. I was struck by the same thing that you mentioned, chairs. That seems like phase 2 should go first. You should try to make the structure as watertight as possible. I mean, I think that what I understand is the windows are open anyway. They have grills on them, and it's just sort of like a very. It's not a weatherized space. It's a stone tower. It's an observation tower. But it seems like if water has been identified as the main problem here because it's penetrating from the roof, then you'd want to tighten that up before you do any interior rehab. I'm just wondering, how do we get at that? How do we get an answer to that? I mean, I'm fully supportive. I believe the tower is a historical tower, and once again, this is a preservation effort. So I think it certainly qualifies for the funds, or as a candidate for the funds. I would like to have, is there someone that could present this to, since this really isn't our bailiwick determining how the execution of the work, but when it goes to CPC, it seems like there should be someone there that can really explain why the phasing of the work is structured this way. Someone has come up with this phasing, and someone has identified a cost for each phase. And is there someone that could speak to the CPC about that, Mr. Barrett?
There definitely is. And so I'm the pinch hitter here. Our representative of the Belleville Improvement Society is on a flight back from San Francisco. So I was called in to kind of pinch hit for him at the last minute. He's also an architect, and he also lives right at our Atkinson Common. So he would be the one.
Is this Matt Ellsworth?
Yes, it is. So you know.
All right.
Matt. Yeah.
Yeah, I know him. I worked with him for many.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. So talk to Matt about that.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if there's already some type of roof enclosure. Well, whatever. You'd get a better rate. You get a better answer.
Well, I'm sure he'll give everyone satisfactory responses when he addresses the CPC.
I would tend to agree with you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Joe. Yeah, we both have similar concerns about that. Anyone else have any comment? I guess as a kind of a preliminary, do people feel it's premature to vote in support of this now, given those questions, or do you feel okay taking voicing support or lack thereof? Any thoughts on that?
I think as long as that it's made clear when they do present this for funding that, that the whatever phase one is, if it's not what it's showing here, whatever it is, that it's going to be most beneficial to save it over time, right? I think as long as that's part of it, I think we'd probably all agree that this deserves money. If we could give it all of that money, that would be the ideal situation, right? But I think we don't need to know, as long as that we're aware that that's what's going to happen.
Right. Okay. So it sounds like it sounds like what you're saying, Biff, and see if, I see, wait, before I speak, let me see what Chris Fay has to say. Chris, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I was going to say something similar. Without getting too far into the weeds on this, for me, the bigger picture, and some have heard me speak about the city being more than just old captain's houses and stuff like that, and the WPA is something that I'm very, interested in, I guess would be a way to put it. And the sidewalks plaques are disappearing. More and more, as on my street at least. So I would like to see the tower restored. There be a plaque. There be some, and this is a great opportunity, I think, some further recognition of the city as an industrial city, but also a city that survived the Depression. And this is one of the ways, I think, to do that. So I'm all in favor of this.
Okay. Can I make a motion that we send a letter of support, and including just mentioning our concerns and specifically mentioning that we would like to see the WPA or some sort of WPA plaque added, because I think that's a good idea.
Oh, and
Yeah,
I think
I'd love to make that motion.
definitely part of the plan.
Great.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah, I think that was Ted speaking, right? Saying it was part of the plan.
So I would happily make a motion to support
Okay.
this project, and also recognize some of the architectural questions as well.
Okay. Is there a
I'll make
second for that?
motion.
Yeah, and I'll second that.
Was that Biff?
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Biff. All right, a second here, and we'll do our quick vote here. One moment. Okay, Andrew,
Yes.
Okay. Biff?
Yes.
All right. Mark Syndrome?
Yes, but fix the roof first.
Okay. Yeah, I think I think they've got the message here. We're all worried about that. Chris?
Yes.
Okay. And Joe Morgan?
Yes.
Okay. And the chair agrees. So I'll be careful how I draft that particular one. All right. Well, thanks very much, Ted, for coming in and pinch hitting, as you said. And I'm sure we'll hear more about this, and certainly Joe will, as our representative on the CPC.
Wonderful.
Thank you for the history lesson too.
Oh, yeah, my pleasure. Glenn, Commission, thank you very much. We'll be sure to keep you posted with all the developments.
Thank you very much, Ted.
Have a good night.
Okay. Good night.
Thanks, Caitlin.
Okay. So let's see. Next, we have actually two more, and I guess Caitlin, we're just going to kind of go through the presentations that were posted. Unfortunately, a representative from the I think it was the Parks Department, I think, was going to speak, but they either had were called into a different meeting, or for whatever reason they couldn't attend. They expressed their regrets about that. So here we are.
Yeah, that's right, Chair. This was Kim Turner from the mayor's office, was planned to be here, but got pulled into a city council meeting tonight. But she still wanted me to briefly introduce this project to you all,
Okay.
seeking your support. If there's, lingering questions, we could always move it to the next agenda, but just wanted to introduce it to you tonight in hopes of gaining your support. This first application is from the Department of Public Services and also the mayor's office, seeking to replace the 290 streetlight toppers in the downtown historic district. Toppers to be replaced with energy efficient LED fixtures in keeping with sustainability initiatives. Toppers selected will mimic historic form of existing lights. Lights will improve accessibility of our downtown. And you can see here, they've mapped out where they're going to be and the specific number of toppers to be replaced in each section. And so they are requesting $115,957 in CPC funding to replace 290 post light toppers. And they are requesting your support. You can see here in this picture, this is the existing toppers right here. And then this is the proposal for the replacement.
Caitlin, was that photo, this presentation that you're looking at, was that one of the files that was posted? I'm trying to find that.
This right here is a picture of the spec, and the spec sheet has been posted as part of the CPA application, and the cut sheet is right here.
Okay, but what I'm looking at is, and the very first slide, the very first image, maybe it was the title, yes, had a photo. So this file itself here, what is it? Downtown Lighting Inc. HC presentation 1.12.23 PDF. Was that posted?
This presentation is posted on the NHC website. Yes.
All right, I didn't. Why am I not seeing it?
Hey, Chair, I think it was rolled up in a larger document. I found it, but it was embedded in, I think in a full report, including the.
If you go to the agenda
and
click the name of the project, I think over to the left, you'd see the presentation.
Oh, maybe that's what it is.
Yeah, the link to the product cut didn't work for me, but I did find it in the larger document, the compiled document.
Okay, yeah, I see it now. This is a digression, and I hate to do this because I know people have been critical of my interruptions and drawing these things out, but I want to blow this up because this is an older photo, and I think it shows Ferlita's sub shop there on State Street. It's about where I'm not sure what's there now, but yeah, I did find it, by the way. Yeah, it is Ferlita's. Wow, that's a blast from the past. It looks like it's just upstream from what's now that smoothie play or pizza place, whatever it is. Wow. My my then girlfriend, now my wife, would say how, oh, she'd get a sub from Felitas, and that was dinner for 2 nights. Anyway, I digress. So, end of digression. Let's move right along. Thank you, Caitlin, for humoring me for that. So there's no attendee. Anyone have any questions? It's, I'll say it off the bat. It's not clear to me what our role would be, other than to have kind of consider the existing lamps. The proposed alternatives are similar. Caitlin, if you can go back to slide 3, you can see that they're very similar. It was hard to see from the existing photos whether the proposed new ones have that crossbar, which I think was originally intended to hold the ladder of the lamp lighters. So obviously they're just a vestigial into some previous past, but they'll definitely look somewhat different because it looks like they have a frosted glass panels rather than the clear ones we have now, but they're pretty similar. So I guess the main thing that I'd be interested in your opinions on is whether you think using these would have any adverse effect on historical values or anything. Does anyone have a comment on that?
The one question I had, and
Yeah.
I think on one of the slides it mentions the color availability of that you can get with the lights, the real specs on it.
I mean, like the color temperature of the light itself?
Yeah, because I think the worst thing to do would be to have the really very blue lights on these. Because when you see them, they're supposed to invoke, obviously, like you were mentioning, the old gaslit kind of style.
Right. Yeah, you wouldn't want the like 4000K daylight style.
Yeah,
lighting.
so I'm curious as to what that is, because if the idea is to make it more accessible, which would be more light, is that could be at the place of by using color temperature, but I'm curious about that.
Yeah,
because I'm just not a fan of the blue light.
Yeah. Oh, my wife hates that stuff as well. Caitlin, do you have an answer for that? And Joe, I do see your hand, so we'll get to that in a second.
Nope, I don't have an answer for that.
Joe, what was your question or concern or comment?
Yeah, I mean, I think before we evaluate the project, we ought to make sure that it's eligible for CPC funds as a historic project. And the criteria that the CPC, this is the state coalition of community preservation commissions. This is their flow chart, which was provided. A link to that was provided by Caitlin, so that we could correctly evaluate the eligibility of these proposed projects. And in that flow chart, there are 4 criteria. I think I touched on that with the for the Marine Museum. But the question is, will the funds be spent on one of the following actions? 1, acquisition of an historic resource. 2, preservation of an historic resource. 2, rehabilitation of an historic resource. And 4, restoration of an historic resource. So these words are, well, acquisition as well. Are we purchasing an historic property? The other 3 come right out of the Secretary of the Interior standards. So the idea is that that first of all, we are identifying the resource as historic. So are these street lamps historic by nature, by age, by relevance, by their historic content and material presence? And then if they are, is the work that's being proposed to be funded, is it either a preservation or a rehabilitation or a restoration of the resource? So I think our first question is to determine, are they indeed historic lamps? Are they historic infrastructure and historic material, manifestations in the street? just as we would for a house or any other building. And then
Mm.
how the work that's being proposed, either preserves them as is, clearly not, they're being retrofitted for LEDs.
Right.
So that's the goal. But are we throwing away any of the historic fabric in this process? Are we reducing is the project that's being proposed reducing or removing historic fabric in lieu of actually preserving it or rehabilitating or restoring it?
Yeah. I think you have some very valid concerns there, Joe. And I'll get as far as the first part, it's a little bit complicated in that I think they're assuming because it's within the defined historic district, so there might be an assumption that would include it, but obviously it's not there. Those were probably installed around the time of the urban renewal and downtown rehabilitation, just like the Customs House was. That was, it was basically the period from about 1970 to 1976 or 8 or so when a lot of it was going on. So that's probably when they probably aren't any older than that, right?
That's the date on them. It's like 73 or 74, I think, is what's on most of them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Biff. I didn't even know they were dated like that. So but that makes perfect sense. That would fit with the time frame. So yeah, I agree, Joe. It's and my initial reaction to this project was, gee, kind of a head scratcher for me. Is this really, what can we say about this really?
Well, I think that if the city wants to retrofit for energy efficiency, I think that's a laudable project, and it's no reason why it shouldn't go ahead. If we could indicate to the city that indeed these fixtures are not historic by nature,
right,
because they don't satisfy the criteria, then what that does is it opens up it gives a green light to the project from our point of view. It's just that CPC funds can't be spent on this project. They have to find funding elsewhere, I believe, if I'm interpreting this correctly. So
yeah. Okay. So all right. So it sounds like the way I translate what you just said, Joe, is that we could say, put it this way. I'd like to know if you guys feel that the chosen or proposed replacement lamps would not have an adverse effect on the historic character of the downtown.
I mean, I think since we're talking about replacing something, built in the early 70s that was made to mimic something from before, it's really more about, like you said, like how is it affecting just the overall historic district, the historic area. And so I think, like I was mentioning before, I think the color of that light really is a big deal. And when you walk through those streets downtown, that the warm light is definitely a big part of that. But looking at that for the CPC funding, it's like, I don't see any way that this would qualify because they're not historic, I wouldn't think. Otherwise, I think all of us would be considered historic. And they're not replacing, they're not rehabilitating them, which would be nice to see. I mean, there's several of them that are bent and need to be fixed, obviously, and they bother me. Like, and you try to take a nice photograph of some of them, and they're and they are very photogenic. So I think to keep in that style is appropriate. But I don't know if they're looking for funds in the right place. But
would a fair summary of what you're saying, Biff, be that it's not really it's not having an adverse effect on a historic resource because you're basically doing the same. You would be doing the same thing today that you did 40 50 years ago, and putting in something that is an imitation of a historic thing, not necessarily better or worse, but kind of more the same. So it's yeah, okay, 6 and 1/2. It's not helping it much, but it's also not hurting it, especially if the color temperature is not that
Yeah.
harsh bluish white light. I think we all agree on that. Now, Joe, your hint is that a fair summary of what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, let me remove my hand here, but I agree with, I agree with,
Don't cut
with
off your
Jeff.
hand.
Oh,
Go ahead, Joe. I'm sorry.
Yes, I think that's a fair statement. And I kind of like the way Biff is going at it in his argument, is saying that there's a quality, actually, the lighting, which is actually what these items are for, that they provide a certain quality, an aesthetic quality along the street edge in the historic area of downtown. I think that's a really important aspect to bring up. But the lamp itself is not historic, and we would not be to replace them, as you said, we would not be damaging or reducing or degrading the existing historic context in which we see them,
Right.
because they're not really part of the original historic streetscape.
Okay. All right. I think what I can do, I think I'll use my exalted position of chair to make sort of executive decision. I would rather not, let me think for a second. What I think I'd like to do, and I'll hear your, see if you agree with this, is I'd like to draft something and bring it back to this commission in our next meeting. So you guys, because I want to make sure that I'm saying the right thing and expressing the view of the commission, and we can give it a thumbs up or down at that point. Is that reasonable with you folks, my fellow commissioners? See a couple of nodding heads.
Yeah.
All right. I will. What was, did someone say?
No, I said yes.
Yeah, I heard that. Okay, I thought someone else was, okay.
But Chair, ultimately, we do have to support it, support the project or not support it based on the criteria, I believe,
Yes.
Stipulated by the CPC, correct?
Yeah. Yes,
Okay.
that would, yes. Well, I can't imagine. Well, put it this way, that ultimately the CPC makes that decision, but I
Yes.
certainly would seem inappropriate, to say the least, for us to make a recommendation that would be contrary to those rules or guidelines.
Well, we have to tell them, is it an historic structure?
Right.
So
Okay.
basically, we have to provide them with some solid foundation.
If that, okay, that's a good, so is that, so sounds like from where you sit on the CPC, that what the thing that's helpful to them and what they're looking to the historical commission for, besides whether we just overall support it or not, that something about our view of the historic nature of what's being touched. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. All right, good. All right. So let me do that, and we'll come back to this. I think there's, I'm quite confident there's enough time in the process to do that. Okay, so we won't take an action. So is anyone vehemently against not voting on that tonight? I didn't see anyone really objecting. By the way, I think it was Biff's comment, you reminded me of a photograph I took quite a few years ago on a very foggy night along Pleasant Street, from like where Central Church is looking down the street, and you can see those lamps kind of glowing in the fog. It's very atmospheric, if I might say so. Anyway,
Yeah.
all right, let's get to the last one so we can get out of here.
That's exactly my point, though.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I get it. Okay, so we have one last one here, and this is the City Hall renovation feasibility study. I hope you guys, I know I took a look at that and said to myself, these guys get paid well. Anyway, so Caitlin, what can you want to go walk through the presentation, and we'll see what we can do with that one?
Sure. Real quick, again, Kim Turner from the mayor's office wanted to be here, but asked me to run through these slides real quick, seeking a letter of support. But again, if this can just be, an introduction to the project, if we need to add it to the next agenda, that's fine too. So mayor's office is seeking CPA funding for a city hall renovation feasibility study. As you all know, the building is historic, Italianate in structure, listed on the National Register. It has a preservation restriction on it through the Mass Historical Commission. And it's the mayor's office thinks that this is in need of several interior upgrades and modifications, specifically inside, no effective wayfinding for the public. Office spaces don't seem to be organized and scattered. Lack of natural light. There's some storage issues. Efforts to retain and celebrate the building's history want to be looked at, and also system upgrades, including ABIT and HVAC. And so the mayor's office is looking for CPA funding for the renovation study in the amount of $47,000. And we're looking for your support for this effort. And that's what I have for tonight, Chair.
Sorry, I was muted there. Caitlin, did you display slide 4? I don't remember seeing that one go by.
Oh, this is just it's kind of hard to read, but this looks like it's the just showing the, I guess, inefficiency of the interior layout.
or lack thereof. All right. I should note that there's little doubt in this case that we're dealing with a historic resource. It's the city hall is listed. It's got its Form B. It's considered. It has a preservation restriction. And to that last point, I took a look at that because I wanted to see how restrictive it was. And on the bottom of page 2, it says, with respect to alterations, the grantor agrees. That's, in other words, the city agrees that no alterations shall be permitted to the premises, including the alteration of any interior, unless A, clearly of a minor nature, not affecting the characteristics, blah, 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 or B, the commission has previously determined it will not impair such characteristics after reviewing the plans and so on, or C, required by casualty or emergency. So now, Caitlin, I don't think, now, what's Kim's role? Is she like in City Hall exactly?
She is the senior project manager in the mayor's office.
Okay, that's Kim Turner.
Yes.
Okay, so are you aware of any discussions that were had about the fact that there's this preservation restriction, and obviously anything they do would have to, well, I can't imagine them. I mean, just doing the excuse me, just doing the study doesn't they don't need any approval from us for that, because they're just doing a study. They're not actually affecting anything. But it seems to me difficult to imagine them doing almost anything that they're proposing without having to bring it before the NHC for approval. Right?
Yeah, I think the mayor's office is where there's a PR in the building. I believe they've reviewed it. It's attached to the CPA application. I think there's understanding that the study and any kind of proposals would have to be worked out in conjunction with MHC and would have to be reviewed by MHC to be in compliance with the PR.
Yeah. So those are for just to make sure all my fellow commissioners understand what the point I'm getting at is that doing a feasibility study is fine, but because of the nature of the preservation restriction, if they wanted to, let's say, rearrange interior walls and so forth, they would need to come and have those reviewed by the historical commission to determine if there was going to be any adverse impact on the historical nature of the structure and so on. So that'll be an interesting one, because there is, I can imagine some things, because there are a lot of partitions that were not original, that is somewhat crudely done in some cases, and the removal of which would probably be a plus, not even a minus. And there are other things. There are some nice, molding and trim and framed openings and so forth that are definitely contribute to the historic character. So it would be, that will, if it should come to pass, that'll be an interesting discussion. Okay, so I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware of that. So any thoughts or comments on this? I mean, this is a little bit like the last one. It wasn't clear to me. Well, I sorry to have to lean on you so heavily tonight, Joe, but from the CPC's point of view, like what would they be looking for from us on this one?
This is a little bit trickier because, as you say, it's clearly a historical resource. I think it's up for discussion in the CPC as to whether it satisfies, say, usually we use the term rehabilitation if we're trying to adapt an existing historic structure to ongoing contemporary use. So I maybe that's the argument here per the Secretary of the Interior standard. So I guess I'll have to bone up on that, because that might be the question that's asked is, how does this, because it's not a restoration, it's not an exterior restoration. What we're doing is we're looking at space planning and better use of the interior of the building. So I don't know if it addresses anything really of the historical nature of the building, other than you're using the existing structure in order to satisfy a city government purpose and maintain it as in its existing use. So I think it might fly, but I just don't know how to correctly interpret it for the CPC.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Mark, did you want to make a comment or ask a question?
Yeah, I think this is just an FYI, and I don't even know why we have to discuss this.
Well,
nothing's being done right now. I mean,
no.
honest to goodness, this is just a proposal, and I think we have nothing to base our opinions on as to what they're doing, because nothing's been proposed.
That's correct. Really, I think this is a CPC. Our opinion doesn't really, I think, move the needle here one way or the other. It's really a CPC decision on whether it qualifies for funding or not.
Okay.
I guess.
Yeah. I can't see any good reason to disagree with what you've both just said. Biff, did you also have a comment?
Yeah. I guess I would be worried too that let's say they do get this funding, and they, get the schematic designs and a phasing strategy, which to me sounds like, here's what we could build, and here's, the phases what we could build it, so you could cost it out over several years or whatever. But then, as you were mentioning, if we're going to have to be signing off on that design work, like how much of that would have to go, are they going to have to spend more money on top of this just to get to a place that is suitable? But again, I agree. I don't think that we have much say in this, but I don't. It's curious to me to see what they'd be able to do with that 47 grand.
Yep. Hey, what would you gentlemen, do you feel it would be appropriate and a good idea for me to just not send a memo or a letter of support, but merely a memo saying that, we think the city, or maybe the appropriate person to send it to is really Kim and the mayor, that we don't object to this feasibility study. However, the people doing the study and the city needs to just bear in mind that there is this preservation restriction. So anything that affects the historic nature, like historic features inside and so on, will need to be reviewed. That's all, and we can kind of leave it at that. Does that sound?
That's a better way of what I was trying to say. Yeah, I think that's right.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I think that, because I am concerned. The mayor is relatively new. I mean, he may be perfectly well aware of the restriction and what it means. I'm sure that, for example, Andy and Caitlin, they're certainly aware of it, but they may not have, had this discussion with them. So that might be appropriate. All right. Well, it sounds like we don't need either a motion or a vote on whether we are going to support this, because it's kind of one of those. Uh, uh, those of you watching the video saw my gesture just then. All right. Any objection to then moving on?
Let's.
Let's. Okay. Very good. Okay, the only, let me just think here. We have the approval of the minutes from the 22nd of, oh, actually, we can do this first. So the 22nd of December, there were 4 people present, and I know who they are. So Biff, Joe, Mark, and myself I can vote on this. So to speed things along, I'll go ahead and make a motion that the minutes from the 22nd of December be approved. Does anyone second that?
I will second that.
That was Biff, right?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. So your vote on that, Biff?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Joe?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mark Sindro?
Yes.
And the chair is yes, so we have enough votes to approve those, Gretchen. Very good. There is one quick update from the chair. The way the ordinance establishing this commission is was amended a few years ago. Each year, at the beginning of the year, the commission needs to vote to elect a chair and vice chair. So obviously, we're not doing that tonight, but I want to make you aware of that. First of all, I'm willing to subject myself to revoting, but you can but we'll have a vote. I'd like to have the vote at the next meeting later in January, and I would encourage folks to think about either volunteering for either chair or vice chair. The job of vice chair is actually not all that more time consuming than just being a regular member. About the only significant job I can think of is that that's kind of the default person to run a meeting in the event that the chair is not able to is not available. Other than that, there really isn't much really more to do than that. So think about it. You don't have to throw your hat in the ring, as they say right now tonight, but do think about it, and we can discuss and take a vote at our next meeting. And if no one else, this would be your chance to either throw in anything else or make a motion to adjourn, because I think that's the end of our regular agenda.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fay. Is there a second?
I'll second Mark Sendron.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Okay, Andrew.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Baus.
Yes.
Okay, Mark.
Yes.
Okay, Chris.
Yes.
Okay, Joe Morgan.
Yes.
Okay, and the chair concurs. Well, thank you once again, gentlemen, for your attendance. Sorry for the few digressions. I do try to keep them to a minimum, and bid you all good night, and stay healthy and warm, and see you in a couple of weeks.
Thank
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.